welcome to Two Rivers Tuesday. I am here with John Teague for another episode. This is where we unpack the sermon a little bit more, highlight things from what's going on in our church, and get into all sorts of other stuff. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Maggie. How are you?
I'm well.
Great. So tell me this, Maggie.
Oh, great.
Did you have a celebrity or like actress, or no, not actress, that would be weird, like an actor crush when you were growing up?
So you're gonna think this is very funny. No one like traditional comes to mind, but as a high schooler, I kind of had a crush on Matt Chandler.
The preacher?
Yep.
Oh boy.
So I know that everyone's going to be like, that checks out.
That totally checks out.
So I actually had a friend,
Preacher crush.
Here I go. I shouldn't be saying this on live recording, but I had a friend who photoshopped my face into a picture with him. And in hindsight, that is so weird and creepy and like not okay to do. But she thought it was funny. So yes, that's like the only crush I can really think of having. But I'm sure there were others like Zac Efron or something dumb.
Okay,
like
yeah, like for the rest of us normal people,
for.
That was more what I was going for when I really backfired on me.
I have a feeling I'm going to majorly regret sharing that. Probably so, but I'm glad you did. And it's recorded for all to see. Who was that lady you mentioned? Helen Hunt?
Helen Hunt?
Who is that?
Did I say on Sunday
the
sermon that I had a crush on her?
You did.
Okay. So Helen Hunt, she was in a show back in the 90s called Mad About You with Paul Reiser. But a lot of people in our church might not be old enough to remember that show, you being one of those people. So she was also in the movie Twister. Do you remember Twister?
Yes.
She was in Twister.
Yes.
And then she was in Castaway. I talked about Castaway on Sunday with Tom Hanks. She was his girlfriend and fiance before his plane went down. And yeah, Helen Hunt, for some reason, she was older, but for whatever reason, like I had a crush on her as a kid.
Yeah. I get it. Okay, so on Sunday, I want to highlight one thing or two things kind of going on in our church family. So on Sunday, we had our first week of Discover, which is exciting. So we had 20 people kind of considering membership with us and in that process, and so that is always something to celebrate, and I love this group of people. It is really sweet to see who God is bringing into our church family, and it's an honor to get to kind of journey with them into the life of our church.
Yes.
And I say that every time.
Yes.
Like every time I'm like,
they're
I
always
love
your
this group
favorites.
of people. I love this group of people, and it's true every time. They're so great. And then the other thing I want to highlight is prayer night is tomorrow. So Tuesday night, probably while you're listening to this, it'll be that night. Anything you want to talk about for that?
Gosh, I just want to extend the invitation to everyone. And I, was talking to someone recently who had attended their very first one. And on their way, it was almost like they had decided we should probably try this out. And on their way, they were concerned about what they had gotten themselves into. And is this going to be something boring? Is this going to be something real churchy? And they referenced a specific denomination I will not say, just very stereotypical, and it blew all of their preconceived notions out of the water.
I love that.
So I would just say, if that's you, come.
Yes. Yeah. I always leave so glad that I went. I know that like the getting there can be hard for people, but once you believe that the reward on the other side is worth it, that really helps. So we hope to see y'all there.
Yes.
What time will it be?
That's at 6:30 on Tuesday night.
Yep, at the church office. So we hope to see you. All right, back to Tom Hanks. So what is one of your favorites? Does it have to be the favorite or the best? What is one of your favorite Tom Hanks movies?
Oh, gosh. I think Tom Hanks is one of the greatest actors of our lifetimes, like our generation, for sure. And so I thought he was brilliant in Castaway because that is so hard to do. But not everybody loved that movie. My wife did not like that movie at all. She hated that movie. Needed more story and drama and relationship. A guy on an island for most of the movie. I get it. I get it. But he was fantastic in that. I really liked him in Captain Phillips.
Yes.
That movie was intense.
Yes, it's so good.
Hey, funny story about that movie. I was doing, let's see, when this movie came out on video, I probably rented it on Netflix when you got DVDs in the mail.
Oh,
I feel like maybe.
Yeah. Or what about Redbox? Do you remember those?
It could have been Redbox. Maybe it was Redbox. And I just remember we had it on DVD, and I watched it in the living room of our house in a inflatable raft. Just to like totally get submersed in the story.
Wow, you're committed.
I had a raft. I had like one of those like kind of inflatable rafts you could use in a pool as a big prop for a sermon. And so I inflated it and sat in it while I watched the movie, and Katie thought I was ridiculous, and she hated that movie. It totally stressed her out. Tom Hanks was great in that movie. My wife would like You've Got Mail way better. He was good in that too.
Classic. Yep.
And that was Meg Ryan. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's pretty great.
Yes. Yeah, that is a good one. How about Forrest Gump? Forrest Gump fan?
I liked Forrest Gump. I don't love that movie like some people do, but it was good.
Yeah, he's a great actor. All right, so how did Tom Hanks come up? Tell us a little bit about how you connected that.
Yeah, Tom. What was the connection, John? It was thin. The connection was thin. I was thinking about Castaway. I recently watched that movie again, and I was thinking about how, Tom Hanks, his plane goes down. He washes ashore on this deserted island, and he starts out as this regular person with a job, with a relationship, a fiance, a family, friends, all these things. And he gets marooned on this island, and for the next 4 years, I think he's there for like 1,500 days, which is crazy to think about. All alone, he kind of starts to go crazy, and he looks like he's lived on an island, for 1,500 days. He's dirty, he's thin, his beard and his hair are unkept, and I was just thinking about the picture of him when I thought about this man in Mark chapter 5 who lived among the tombs, like lived in the caves on a hillside, cut off from community and people, because of some circumstance in his life that led to him being oppressed by all kinds of evil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you kind of walked us through this story in Mark 5 where, yes, Jesus heals this man. And I think you're trying to help us see that we all have someone maybe like that in our life, in a sense that is very easy to write off, is the word you use.
Yes.
So we can probably all call to mind a specific person, or maybe like a type of person that you want to shy away from, and we all feel that natural tendency to kind of like want to keep in the margins. And so you kind of gave that type of person a name just to kind of help us process and talk through it. And so we kind of coined Doug. And so we all can think of the Doug, so to speak, in our life or around. And so we wanted to kind of think through, all right, Jesus didn't shy away from this man. And
That's right.
It's so easy for us to shy away from those type of people. What do you think? Why do we tend to want to shy away, or why is it easier to keep those type of people on the outskirts?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with one that just kind of maybe sort of helps identify with us in the good part of our heart. I think we can just be overwhelmed with someone like Doug, who lives in the tombs, who lives in the caves, who lives on the fringe, who may be struggling with some kind of just overwhelming mental health issue, or some type of addiction, or some type of they're just in the grips of something, and we're such fixers by nature, and we just like don't even know how. We don't have a framework in our mind for how to enter into a relationship with someone when there's all that going on.
Yeah, for sure. I think it really connects to the dangerous prayers idea, and that like as we pray these dangerous prayers, we will start to live dangerous lives, and the Spirit will lead us into dangerous, quote unquote, situations that take us outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And to engage with someone like Doug feels dangerous to us. And I think just trusting God and being obedient when you feel him prompting you to engage in those situations, and trusting God with the outcome is hard, and it feels so dangerous to us.
Yes. And I think we should just say right out of the gate, like, Jesus didn't shy away from this man because Jesus has the power over any type of darkness and evil, right? And that was on display in this story. And so he wasn't afraid of this, because he had the power over it. He had the authority over it. He could fix it. He could heal this man. So he wasn't afraid of that. And to a certain degree, like, we have the Spirit of Christ in us to guide us, maybe not to like, just, we don't have some kind of like Bruce Almighty power that we just wield, in our fingertips, but we do have the Spirit of God within us, to lead us and guide us. And so I wanted to make sure we said that, but also Jesus didn't shy away from this man because he has this perfect love and has this ability to see people as people. And we, in the brokenness of our sin, sometimes just see people as problems. And I think that's another reason why we keep people at the margins, right? So maybe we're overwhelmed and we just so wish we could do something. We just don't know what to do. Or maybe these people are annoyances and Doug is a problem and an obstacle. He's a distraction. And it ruffles, it messes with our routines and our comfort zones.
I love Jesus's compassion in this story, and I love how the first question Jesus asks is, "What's your name?" And I think that it can be so easy to dehumanize the Dougs in our life, or that type of person. It's easier to just not think about their story, not think about what their name is, not think about how they feel, not think about their humanness. Because if we go there, if we start understanding and knowing, then that's going to require compassion. It's going to cost us something, and then it really gets dangerous and messy. And so, but I just love that first step Jesus takes, which is an encouragement to me and a very practical, like, okay, that could be my first step, is asking, "What's your name?" And there's so much power and softening when we know someone's name and begin to engage at just that level of getting to know who they are.
And I just, quick aside, like, this isn't just about people that are on the fringes of society. I think we have a tendency to forget, like, when we call customer service, like when we call Comcast because our internet's down, or we have to call the cell phone company, or we have to call somebody because there's a problem, and we would do well to remember that whoever picks up that phone call is a person, a human with dignity and a story, and they're trying to earn a paycheck to provide for their family, just all those things, right? So it's just almost good. I have tried to remember to even just be like, who am I speaking with? They'll sometimes say their name, and I will say, "Hi, so-and-so," my name's John and I'm a human too, right? And so I need to treat you like one. Yeah,
that's really helpful. And I think too, in our culture of everything being so, I don't know the word I'm looking for, the internet. What is the word I'm
impersonal?
Looking for? Yes,
faceless.
Everything is so faceless, and you're interacting on whether it's social media or the call or just the quick, like the waiter, or the barista, or the person checking you out. Like, we have a lot of interactions, yet we feel, or so many people feel, so disconnected. And so I think just that simple question, "What is your name?" can help humanize those interactions that we have, and that will make each of those interactions, it will help us see the opportunities that those can be if we rehumanize them. So good. That's helpful to think about. I like how you brought up the idea of that it's a spectrum. So Dougs are those people that we're talking to on the phone. Doug is the person that we may see at the Cleveland Emergency Shelter, or Doug could be our neighbor. So it is a huge spectrum of people that we have a hard time wanting to engage with. Talk a little bit about the Cleveland Emergency Shelter and how we might think through serving there, loving on that type of person.
Well, have you ever served at the emergency shelter?
Yes.
Sometimes you'll go there to serve a meal and you'll end up in conversations with folks, and sometimes you won't, and because they would rather just sit and be by themselves. And some of that is because they've been wounded or hurt or disappointed by people, and some of that may also be because they've been so kind of on their own for so long that they've kind of lost that ability to even have that human interaction. I was having an interesting conversation with Jesse Disney last week about this, because he has a huge heart for the less fortunate, the people who are on the streets for various reasons, who are homeless, find themselves in these difficult situations. And he actually did some research on this one time. I think he was in college, and he wrote a paper about this, so he could speak more intelligently about it than I can. But I just remember him saying that what he found is that a lot of times people don't necessarily end up on the streets or end up at the Cleveland Emergency Shelter because they're crazy. They're like, Doug, so to speak, who lives in the tombs. Something probably happened in their life, some kind of difficult situation. Somebody abandoned them. Someone turned their back on them. Someone betrayed them, and they landed there on the street. And then I think what I'm trying to say is, like, when they get to a place of mental unhealth, like we might sometimes associate with folks that we see on the street, it's because it very well could be because they spent so much time cut off from people and community and healthy community that's what led them there. I think the really unpolished way to say that is, like, they're not on the street because they're crazy necessarily. They may be going crazy because they've been on the street. Because they don't have the community that we have, and the interaction, the people to treat them like a person. And so when you are treated subhuman for a long time, you just begin to believe it and act subhuman.
Yeah, imagine living your life and for years no one looks you in the eye, or you can tell people are purposely avoiding you or shying away from you or even disgusted by you. Imagine how that you would begin to not feel human. And so I think just the power of, again, asking their name and looking them in the eye goes such a long way into making them feel human again, and helping them remember that they're an image bearer almost. Like, I think that those type of things have significant impact. And so I think it's a matter of letting the Spirit lead you, and it can be as simple as the Spirit leads you to look them in the eye and ask their name, and then the Spirit may continue to lead you into a further conversation where you tell them about Jesus.
And I just wanted to circle back. We serve a meal at the Cleveland Emergency Shelter on the third Sunday of every month, and we feed probably anywhere from 25 to 35 people that will come through there. And the mission of the Cleveland Emergency Shelter is, I love it. This is not just a real transient kind of place that they're taking people in, and they're trying to help get them back on their feet and get them back out into the world. And they are helping them get jobs. They are trying to, they're doing a lot of things to serve these folks and get them back out on their feet. And a lot of families are there, children are there. So it's just it's such a good opportunity to go and be reminded that of people that don't live necessarily like you do, but they're people too, and they need the light of Christ, and they need to, as I was saying on Sunday, see that light in your eyes when you make eye contact with them and treat them like a person.
And I think it also will help for us to see ourselves in them, to see ourselves in the Dougs, if you will. So you shared that C.S. Lewis quote, kind of retell the heart of that quote, what he's getting at there.
So he's talking about C.S. Lewis, who wrote Chronicles of Narnia and many other things, like the Screwtape Letters, and which is talking about, like, how the enemy loves to mess with us and try to distract us from who God has made us to be. He also wrote, there's a book called Surprised by Joy, and it's kind of his story. And he describes his life before coming to know Jesus, kind of like this man that we've been calling Doug, this man who had a legion of evil spirits living within him and oppressing him. And C.S. Lewis writes like this, not because he was demon possessed, by the way, but because he sees himself in this man, in this story in Mark 5. And he said, I was before Christ a zoo of lusts, a bedlam of ambitions, a nursery of fears, a harem of fondled hatreds. My name was Legion. And so he's just saying like, hey, I struggled with just all kinds of darkness.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really important to think about who you were before Christ. And I think meditating on how far he's brought you, what he's healed you from, what those demons in your life, so to speak, were. I think that can be painful. So I understand why people don't enjoy that exercise. But looking back on who you were before Christ, I think is kind of what can really begin to cultivate compassion for people who don't know Christ yet.
That's right.
And when you see like, oh, I had a demon like that, or I used to think that exact same way or whatever, like it gives you so much softness toward them and hope for what they could be. I mean, we talked about this with the Make Me Bold. Like when we start to picture the potential good of who they could turn into and what the Lord could do in their life, if we really start to imagine how the Lord can heal them and how he can bring them from death to life, when we picture that, that makes any potential risk or any potential negative feel so small in comparison.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is boundaries. So this is a popular word, and I think it can be kind of confusing to know what place that plays in this conversation. So for people who they know Doug well, Doug is maybe in their family or really, really close, and they are hearing the sermon and they're maybe feeling a sense of compassion for that person and wondering what it looks like to engage, but also what it looks like to have some healthy boundaries. Do you have any thoughts on how we can kind of navigate that tension?
Yeah, my thought is that's a really specialized kind of answer, right? That I wouldn't even know where to begin, honestly, because of the just how personal that could be. And I don't know the context of the relationship, what this person is into, but I do know that there is, that boundaries can be really appropriate, because of what this person is into, what this person says, or what the influence this person might have on your family, your children, so to speak, that kind of thing. So boundaries are a part of this whole conversation for sure. And I think the only thing I could really say with confidence right now is that boundaries, that the Lord will lead you in that. Just don't let your boundary become a wall that keeps you from telling Doug about Jesus.
Yes.
If all you did was make sure that you told them about Jesus and that they're loved, like that's important, right? And so I think sometimes we think maybe we think we need a boundary, which might be, I'm not saying it is in every case, but might be a fancier way of saying I'm cutting them off from my family or from me because they're messed up. They're messy. And I would just say there may be some wisdom in that boundary. Just don't let it be the wall that keeps you from telling them about Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. I have personally struggled with this of like, I have seen where I use that boundary idea as an excuse to continue doing things the easy way. And in the name of boundaries, I take the easy way out. And so I think that takes a work of the Spirit to lead you and guide you into what it looks like to navigate when to use boundaries, what boundaries to use, how to communicate about those, and how to still love in the midst of those boundaries.
Yes.
And it's also a community project. So I have no chance of figuring out what that looks like on my own.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those things where if this is resonating with you and you're like, yeah, I have no idea how to navigate this, invite your life group into that conversation. Ask your people to pray with you about that and to speak into, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I think boundaries could look like. This is where I think you can engage safely. This is how we'll come alongside you in that. It's a community effort. So don't feel alone in trying to figure that out, because number one, you have the Spirit guiding you, and number two, you have brothers and sisters there to kind of support you as you're navigating that as well. That's
really good.
And then lastly, I have been thinking about this phrase a lot, that the strong have an obligation to bear with the weak. And I just think that as we who like have experienced God's grace, and he has been sanctifying us and strengthening us and maturing us, part of our call is to bear with the weak. And so just entering into the messiness that this is going to bring, and knowing that Jesus has equipped us with everything we need to bear with the weak and to minister to them and to walk alongside them, whatever that looks like. And it's going to be messy, but it's what God's inviting us into.
And don't you think maybe that we could maybe think, well, I don't know if I have the strength to bear with the weak. Like, I'm weak and I don't know if I can bear with the weak. And that may be exactly where the Lord shows up and actually gives you the strength you need.
Exactly.
Strengthens you in this.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Any closing thoughts?
No.
Great. Well, we hope to see you at prayer night tonight, and thanks for listening.
See ya.